This is the Your Sports Resource Podcast, where each week you'll learn actionable strategies that you can implement so the operations of your club support your coaching staff and the direction of your organization. We are committed to excellence in youth sports leadership. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Your Sports Resource Podcast. My name is Renata Porter, and today we are really fortunate to have the head coach and owner of the South Louisiana Swim Team, Kier Braendel, with us. Now, Kier is the head coach and owner of SLST, an aquatic institution based in Metairie, Louisiana, a suburb of New Orleans. With a robust background in coaching and commitment to athlete development, Kier has made significant contributions to the swimming community. Kier's journey in coaching commenced at the age of 18, where she discovered her passion for coaching and teaching at her neighborhood country club, Green Acres. Her dedication to skill set flourished and as she transitioned to coaching from the Crescent City Swim Club, the very team she competed for during the formative years. Over a decade-long tenure at CCSC, Kier honed her expertise, transcending beyond coaching to become a mentor and leader within the organization. Welcome, Kier. Appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so tell us a little bit about SLST and give us your, I read your history there, but give us your history in that transition into why you started your own club.
Okay, great. So I started SLST. We're in our 14th season. So we're like mid-teen years. I started it out of a desire to own a team and lead a group of people. I had been around swimming my whole life. I grew up swimming. I'm one of 6 kids, where it was just like our family thing. We did do other activities, but we all went through swimming. We all had different stories and experiences. But I always leaned towards the teaching and coaching. So I started teaching some swim lessons at 13. I started coaching at a country club that we grew up in, while also swimming for our club team. And then when I went to college, I went to Tulane University in New Orleans, and I realized that, I still wanted to be on the pool deck, even though I wasn't swimming in college. Right. So I asked for a job with my old coach, and he gave me one. So when I started coaching there, I did it for money on the side with a flexible schedule so I could schedule my classes around it. But I also really loved it. It was some of the best parts of my day was going back to the pool after doing college stuff and just seeing families and kids. And through all different hard times I've had, every time I've walked on the pool deck, everything just made sense. So I always coached on the side through my undergrad time. Getting my degree and then even going to get my master's, I also still coached. And at some point while I was getting my master's, got it in public administration. My thesis was involved in swimming. I realized I just wanted to be a coach. I didn't want to be anything else. So I told my boss, he gave me some extra roles. But in Louisiana, well, especially in the New Orleans area, we don't have a lot of indoor or functioning pools that can operate year round. And it's one year, we found there was an indoor pool that had been refurbished after Katrina and no one was using it. And so something inside of me was you have the skill set and I was being called to lead my own team. And I knew that it was the time. And if I didn't do it, someone else would. So I left my job as an assistant with the team I grew up with, and I started my own thing. And we started with 23 members. I was told I wasn't going to make it past winter, but here I am,
Yes.
14 years later. And I built the team on the idea of coaching and teaching kids. I was also a school teacher at the time. I also taught PE at different schools, and I just really like developing people. I like developing myself. I like to watch kids develop, and I think that's really why I started the team. It's for competition swimming, and it is to make better athletes, but it really is just to see that growth in people.
Right. So talk about that transition when you made the leap. Talk about how, I love that you said that you were called to it, but there had to be a bit of trepidation because a lot of coaches who really want to go off and do their own thing are worried about being seen that they're poaching or stealing swimmers. And so talk about how you made that transition, because you moved with 23, and I think you did some special things in order to make sure that
Yeah.
you stayed above the line when you transferred to doing your own thing.
Right. I knew that leaving the team that I was on was going to be challenging, and I knew that I there was going to be some negative feedback. So when I started, I didn't really do any recruiting. I did have some people that I knew that were in like an outside community, kind of 20 minutes away, that supported and encouraged me to start the program. But really, I built from the base up. So like the pool I rented was on the campus of a school. So I
Mm-hmm.
marketed to the students. And then I used those students who like didn't have a background in swimming at all. They were to school with a pool that was just newly renovated but weren't doing any swimming. So I got a lot of members there. I had been in the country club circuit for a long time because that's where I
Right.
coached first. So I had lots of different contacts that I knew. So I marketed to all the different parents and all the different country clubs that I knew to let them know about like specialty clinics or shops I was offering, or just to put my name out there. And then I advertised with Groupon. So um,
Yeah.
Groupon was a service. It was at the ground roots of where you pretty much didn't make any money. You got a ton of people through your door, but people saw what you were doing. So,
Right.
yeah, I think at the time, like whatever you charged, Groupon got like all of it except for 10%. But you still, if you did a good job with that customer, you retain that customer. So that really helped me put my name out there. I also have advertised with the moms blogs.
Oh,
Um, I had forgotten this, that so there's, I don't know if in every community they have the same, but on Facebook there's a mom's blog. New Orleans
I
has one.
never
It's called
heard
New
of that.
Orleans Mom's Blog. It's a business, and there's parents that run it. They write articles, and they're really invested in the community. So we also advertise with them, and we have a swim mom who's a writer who wrote like an article about her daughter that has anxiety, that kind of promoted the team in it. But we also did like formal advertising over like their swim lesson section. I will say advertising with them got a lot of people through our door that maybe weren't aligned with like competitive swimming, but it
Right.
still got our word out there.
Yeah. I think that's great information. So any coach that's looking to make a leap, sometimes you have to think about outside the box. And you also have to like probably steady yourself or ready yourself for the fact that, like, listen, you're not going to have a massive team at first. So you have to
Right.
learn about doing the right things first and
Things
moving
first.
yourself forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say our growth maybe seemed a little slow in the beginning too, just because there have been other teams in our area that have started that mainly focused on like high school age athletes. I mean, we did have some, I mean, I think our oldest swimmer at the time was maybe 12 or 13.
Okay.
And we mainly were young. We were like 8 and under. And so it takes time for those kids to get older. So you got to
Right.
wait like the 4 to 5 years, but we built from the bottom up, and now I have a full system. So kids leave the sport at certain ages because they choose other things. Kids, leave the team. But now that if those things happen, we have a built-in security system of
Right.
kids that are constantly coming in because we focus on the bottom, not the
Yeah.
top.
So you
Not that we
work on
don't
your
focus on the top,
pipeline.
but we build
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of goes to like some of the things that I repeat to clients over and over again. Like to me, the most valuable role in the organization is the head age group coach, because they are the one that's actually building the pipeline. Right. So
Yeah,
the investment in that coach has to be quite substantial to make sure that they're breeding fun, the love of sport. Right. So,
right.
yeah. All right, I want to switch to a little bit that, because you're a coach owned team, you have to balance your duties between being the head coach and running the operations. And they're very different skill sets, but clubs are moving towards that combination CEO head coach role. So how do you navigate, the two different sides of your brain, so to speak, and being able to navigate both of those roles?
Well, I guess kind of piggybacking what you said before, I am the head age group coach on my program. So
Okay.
I am the coach owner. In the beginning, I was kind of a little bit of everything. But as we've built up, I have another coach that is our senior coach. And I am like, I think I'm like the middleman. I'm the transitional person. And it gives me, an eyesight on all of my levels because I can see who's coming to me and who's exiting from me. And
Right.
then as far as the different skill sets, I think that kind of gives some of that pressure off of like some of the detailed minutia traveling, kind of stress that the senior level athletes give to a coach in trying to get to college and making these cuts. um, I use that time and resources to build up the business and
Yeah.
work on different things that are maybe administrative, like structure and parent volunteers and accounting. And also I think that putting myself in the role as the head age group coach and doing um, the owner role kind of makes it a little bit more flex, but I do oversee the whole program.
Right. Right.
So I do a lot of delegating and we do a lot of feedback and we do a lot of communicating, and I probably should delegate more. But I do think that I have a really good pulse of where my team is at and where we need to go and the
Yeah.
direction we need to go into. I do have a
Okay.
lot of support, I think, with my staff too, that if I need to step out and start do some owner roles, I have the support to be able to do that.
Oh, wonderful. Well, so that section right there was full of a lot of gems. And I like the fact that you said that you were over the head coach role. That kind of, head age group coach, in that it does free you up from some of the responsibilities that the senior coach has, because that was resonated by Paul at Wahoo's, right? And I think what else is important is you actually have that perspective or visibility over how each group is flowing into each other. So you're making sure that when the kids are coming in at the early age and as they progress through groups, you have that eye line or that visibility of what's working. So there's less reteaching as they get older, and you've got that visibility of that fluid transition between the programs, which I think is really important as well as a head coach.
Oh, absolutely. And it's helped a lot too, because things that we did years ago, we've changed our methods because we've seen the kids pass through and we're like, oh, some of these kids need to be held a little bit longer in this group. Sometimes we would pass
Right.
kids on too quickly, or the signs of like readiness are way more clear now. Like we know when an athlete's ready to come into this group and when to come out of it. And it gives you a lot of confidence in talking
Yeah.
to a parent, like a really talented athlete. Parents want to push them and move them through, and you're like, well, speed isn't just what we're looking for. They have to have these social, emotional skills. They have to have this understanding of what we're doing. So it really does help being in that like integral, kind of pivotal role of coaching.
Yeah.
It's also my
Yeah.
favorite
I also,
age of kids to
sorry.
teach.
Oh, well, that helps, doesn't it? That helps. Yeah. But I also love, there's also one key aspect that I think a lot of head coaches, I don't care if they're combos CEO roles or not, but they really need to trust their staff to be the professionals that you've hired them to be, right? Now that doesn't mean you kind of just leave them alone. There has to be a balance of accountability. So I find that a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times coaches are either at one end of the spectrum or the other. So they are either like doing everything and hoarding the activity because people don't live up to expectations, which means you're not providing learning opportunities for others. Or you're on the complete other side and you're totally micromanaging your work, which means you're devaluing them as, a person who could contribute so beautifully to your organization. And if you feel like you have to micromanage, well, then again, they're not learning and you're taking away their opportunity to grow, or you've got the wrong people, right? So I think it's really important to surround yourself with the right staff. And that, when you're in that head coach role or that senior role, part of that role is teaching, and it's not teaching just your swimmers, it's teaching your staff. That's how you elevate your entire organization. So that's a really valid point that I just wanted to reiterate to those who are listening. All right, so let's move on to, oh no, let me ask you one more question about this. So what do you think is the key for success for that person who is in that dual role? Because I do find that a lot of these people who are in this role, they do struggle with it. Like they have the absolute desire to be really good on those two opposing sides of skill sets. But, so what do you feel like is in that dual role? What is the key to success there?
Okay, I'll say the first thing I could say is that you will struggle a little. Like there will be some
Yeah.
struggle when you figure out where your sweet spot is. So you will have to know that what your roles and responsibilities are, and you can't like avoid any of them, but you also have to know which ones you can do the best, which ones can be delegated, and where you're stepping in as a support, and which ones you absolutely have to do. And then you need to be organized. You need to set the time aside to make sure you're putting the time into each of those roles. I do a lot of block scheduling. So I'll have certain work that I do on certain days, and I try not to venture far from it. I know when we get in a heavy competition season, sometimes I just need to recover, or I have to switch around what we're doing because there's a deadline, or I've been traveling at a meet all weekend and I have to change it. But I always come back to these like
Yeah.
specific skills that I do on specific days, and it really helps me get back on track. Um, so you just really need to know what's expected of you and know that it will take some time for you to map it out. But once you do, you have a good system down. It's not as hard as you think. Um,
Yeah. And maybe don't be so hard on yourself either. Beat yourself up. No one person can get everything done, and no one person knows everything. Everybody learns, right? So,
Right, exactly. And you get better. The more you do it, you get better. I'll say, COVID was hard for a lot of swim teams, but COVID was actually helpful for our team because of
mhm,
me not having to organize and schedule and plan for the competitions. Even though we wanted to be at competitions, I had more time
right.
to like reevaluate my organizational structure and what my why was, and why I was coaching. Because it was a time where you could exit easily because of so many stressors, but instead we just more doubled down on what we could do, and we really launched even more afterwards because of it.
Okay. Awesome. All right, I want to switch over into staff investment. Now, if you've listened to several of the interviews, and this is a similar question that I ask a lot of the coaches. And we as an organization really push the head coaches or whatever that senior role is to invest in their coaches, because if you develop your coaches and they learn, then you elevate the swimmers as a whole, as an entire organization. Um, what are some of the things that you do? And not everything has to be a conference, right? And so what are some of the things that you do that really help to develop your staff, become the coaches you want them to be, and helps them become the coaches they want to be?
So I do give my assistant coaches a lot of independence in that we do like seasonal planning, but they create their own workouts, and I give feedback
Right.
like what the direction and themes are of what we're doing. I also have signed up all my staff for ASCA and have had some incentives in place for different certifications. So they all have access on their own time to become more educated separately. We have gone to
Okay.
local conferences here, and we do. I do value learning that way. We also do a lot of peer talking to like other coaches, either at in our state or when we travel, just to kind of see what else is out there. And then just recently, I have been really intrigued and interested in the AAU kind of model that's coming up, where I am working to transition my recreational team, which is like my more developmental swimmers, they're less competitive, into the AAU
Right.
swimming model. And they have a great resource for coaching certifications called the Positive Coaching Alliance, which the trajectory and the mindset of what they value in that those trainings are what I would like my coaches to filter through with their why in coaching. So we're doing
Okay.
some trainings through there. And then we do our quarterly meetings. Although I did have some recommendations from you with one of our cold sessions on some more timely meetings in a different way to like build up our staff and support.
Right. Okay. So there's two things I want to pick away at. Like, what is different about that Positive Coaching Alliance that you like? Like, what do they deliver like that you feel like you really resonate with?
I really resonate. Okay, so as coaches, we have a lot of pressure on performance because we're a
Mm-hmm.
competitive swim team, and our goal is like for kids to swim well. And sometimes coaches in their roles don't really, not always, but sometimes we like lack some confidence and like trying to put ourselves out there because we're putting we're going through this training plan and we're putting these kids out there, but ultimately we're not the ones swimming. So um, it's sometimes the pressure of that can really get to you. The Positive Coaching Alliance really makes you focus on this like double coach role where you're not just coaching for the scoreboard, it's the scoreboard and the swimmer. So you're looking at
Right.
what are some skills that you're teaching the swimmer, what are some character building that you're doing, learning that like you're not failing if you're not reaching your goal time. Effort is more important than outcome. How you handle an adverse situation is more important than getting out there and like beating somebody. It's making sure you're teaching the person and also teaching the athlete at the same time. And it helps kind of take that pressure off the coach and the swimmer. And studies have shown that performance is better whenever athletes are coached in this environment, not just in swimming, but in other sports.
Okay. Awesome.
It's a
And
different
then you also,
psychology.
yeah, and I love it. But a lot of clubs are recognizing the fact that they need to go to that holistic view of the whole child, right? And maybe kind of leave that competitive sector for the heavy, like pushing to the senior, right? And your seniors will be stronger in the areas of resilience and things like that if you're like really focusing on the whole athlete in the younger end. My perspective, I'm assuming that would be the case, right?
Yeah, it's a lot about like so like great risk taking, like putting yourself out there to go and take a risk by competing. Some kids are really natural at risk taking. Some kids are perfectionists and self-sabotage because they want to do everything right, and they might be like really good at training and practice, but they get there and it's kind of overwhelming. So coaching a kid through that is more than just like teaching them skills in the water. You have to have the ability to give an athlete ownership over their swimming, and it's a
Yeah.
much better way of giving a kid or a swimmer or a young adult ownership over their process, and that skill transfers to everything in life, not just swimming.
Right.
School,
Hey,
grades.
so that Positive Coaching Alliance, do you have to be a AAU member or something like that to get that information, or can
No,
people just go onto the website?
I think you could just go to positivecoachingalliance.com and sign up. But if you become an AAU coach, there's like 3 sections that are required. That's their requirements to
Oh,
coach.
okay.
So you have to take 3 of them, but you don't have to be an AAU coach to take them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yep.
The other thing you mentioned that is interesting, and I just kind of want to poke at a bit, and that is you said peer talking, and you said you go to meets and talk to people. Can you explain that a little bit more? What do you mean by
Oh
that?
yeah, sure. So we've been around swimming a long time, and me and my staff were like we like people. Like that's why we're coaching. So when we go to meets, we like to meet other coaches. Some coaches are more open to communicating, some still have that whole like gatekeeping of knowledge. But my staff and I have learned a lot actually from peers on the pool deck that we've opened up to that maybe had the same problems that we had, or maybe had different ones, and we've also helped them through. And it's really nice to have that. Well, like I have some coaching friends, and I'll just text when I'm going through like a hard time, be like, "What would you do about this?" But and
Awesome.
we've met on the pool deck, and it's not just in within our state. It's coaches that coached in our state and moved on, or coaches that we've met at travel meets, because everybody has a different experience. No, I've not met a team that's operated the same as each
Yeah.
other yet. We're all organic little organizations. And so somebody may have had a problem that I'm going through right now, can be like, oh, you can get through this, or I might have just solved a problem that could help someone else.
Yeah. I think that's so encouraging because I feel like coaches hold their cards so close to their chest. They're afraid to,
A lot do.
yeah, that I don't know. I mean, sometimes I liken it like they got some special thing going on that they're inventing the wheel that they don't want to share. But I think a lot of times they just really feel like they'd be exposing themselves, that they need help or support. And that's not really it. I mean, you have to think about the fact that you'd be helping the entire swimming community by coaches sharing information with each other and saying, like you said, I'm having a problem here, and they may be able to go, I tried this too and I failed just like you did, but I also tried this. Like, that knowledge can be just pivotal in your organization. So finding a peer to relate to sometimes might be even better than having a mentor. I just think having someone that can travel along with you is wonderful.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna say like, so when I first started, I was really uncomfortable with like, showcasing my weaknesses. But then I just
Yeah,
realized that like I'm not a static human being either. I mean, I evolve also. I develop too, and we develop as people. And I mean,
right.
I like to read a lot, and I like to I'm always willing to learn. So I think that once I got to the point where I was just like, if in order for me to be better, I have to recognize where my weaknesses are, and the only people that can help you is if you talk about it.
Yeah. So that's great information for coaches. Like, really, I mean, your own development is necessary. And again, I know you can do courses and learn things online, but they tend to be high level. And the areas where people have problems is when they try to take those philosophies or viewpoints, or trying to implement a new idea, and like they need the detail to understand how to relate that to their own organization. And
Yeah.
that's where learning from other experiences is where it's going to be key. You're going to move much quicker.
Yeah, there's been a couple of instances where I like thought something was like the end of the world, and they were like, "Oh no, that happened to me too." I was like, "Oh, yeah."
Okay,
Like, yeah,
awesome.
this is just something that you go through. Like, this is something you have
Yeah.
to deal with,
Yeah,
Um
yeah, absolutely. That's great. That's great. All right. I think I have probably a final question for you, and that is, you mentioned Colt earlier. You are one of the people who participates in our Colt program, and basically that's club operations leadership training, and it just kind of really dives deep into the basic platforms of what we believe makes a successful organization. And then we take that and we adapt it to, while there's a learning piece, there's also a discussion piece about how do we take that and adapt it to your organization. And you kind of get that one-on-one opportunity to be speaking to an outside advisor month to month, where you're talking about specific things like growth, money, how do you organize your team, what is leadership, what are communications, those kinds of things. So tell us, like, what have you learned from Colt that you've been able to apply to your organization, or like, where have you received the reassurance that you're actually on the right track?
Sure. So Colt has been really great, in that it's like once a month meeting, but there's a specific topic. It's kind of like a full year of like cleaning house. So, like I mentioned, I really like learning and improving and getting better. And Colt's like broken down into like these like structured, I guess, organized parts of like what it means to own a business. Because I am the leader of my organization. If I'm neglecting something, it gets neglected unless it's like fully systemized and then delegated. So Colt really helped like in the beginning. We had just redone our mission and vision statement, but working with
Okay.
um like in the beginning it helped us redo it even better, that made sure that I was going forwards in the direction I wanted to. We went over budgeting, and we've gone over strategic planning, all these different areas that are things that you really want to work on as a leader. But sometimes, life just gets too hectic. So for me,
Yeah.
investing in that gave me like a focus every month. And I mean, I'm still involved. We haven't finished out the year, but I really liked
Right.
the positive feedback of like, oh man, I'm doing that right. And then like the areas where I was like, oh man, I need to do that better. I'll implement, put it on the target for next year. I'll start encouraging that in my repertoire now. So it's really good feedback. Especially sometimes when you get stuck in like the coaching leadership role, you kind of feel like you're like in a void where there's no one like giving information back. It was really good to just
Yeah.
consult with someone to have some feedback on like, oh, you're maybe making this mistake, but you're doing this really well. So it's a good
Yeah.
honest assessment, and it really also helps to define the different like roles we have in a swim team. Because sometimes people
Right.
swim team is just, you go out and you swim some laps, kids have a lot of fun, you go to meets, then you go home. But that's not what swim teams are. There's way more involved. There's so many little things. We're event planners, we are CPAs, we are accountants,
Yeah.
we are communicators, we're motivational speakers, we're designers because we're making these plans. There's so many different roles that a coach, especially a coach in a management position, serves. It's really good to like see all the parts broken down.
Yeah. It's also good for us as an organization as well, because we get to learn, I mean, even when I go to clients, I'm always learning, even if I'm delivering similar information in the workshop, like vision, values, and behaviors in those workshops, I'm always learning things about organizations that are great for us to share with other clubs. So the
Yeah,
same thing through with Colt, I get to go, okay, I didn't understand. I didn't know that, or I can go back to other clubs and go, oh, wow, let me ask everybody that that I've been working with, hey, how do you guys handle this? And it's just information that we share. Again, all of it is in the effort of like really grounding and establishing the community, the swimming community, as excelling and being able to excel. Yeah. All righty. Any final words or thoughts? I'm hoping that you would be open to, those coaches who might be looking to branch off and start their own club, that you'd be open to them writing to you or contacting you.
Yeah, definitely. That if anybody is interested in starting their own club or just started their own club and have
Yeah.
some like questions or problems they're navigating, definitely open to helping anybody. And I would just recommend this, that if you're deciding on whether to start your own club, make sure it's not just to have athletes that can compete and win against other athletes. Then make sure when you are taking on the role of starting a club that you're there to develop the swimmers as people too, and enhance the swimming community as a whole. That it's just not,
Yeah.
your team shouldn't be just a place to like pull kids from other teams to just go and be faster. It's swimming is a valuable sport, and the competition is just one part of it. It's a lifestyle. I still swim for exercise. I have swimmers that have passed through me that never swim in college but are still giving back to the sport. um, I just ran into one yesterday who was coming to do some lifeguarding assistant stuff for some volunteering and was like, man, I missed the pool. Like, so swimming is more than just the scoreboard, even though it is the scoreboard also. So make sure you have
Yeah.
that in you, because it is a really precious thing, you know?
Yeah. I think that's really good, valid advice and great advice. I mean, even for the coaches who may be running from boards, right? Valid that you may not have a great board and you want to move on, but you really have to understand what you're getting into and understand what you want to accomplish. It can't be just that you're running away from something. So it's really valid. Thank you for that. How can they find your information if they go to the website? And what is that? SLST dot.
So our overarching website is actually thedigitalpool.com.
Okay.
But our competition team site is slst-seahorses.com. And my email
Okay.
address is slst.seahorses@gmail.com. I had to think about
Okay. Okay. And we'll put that in the show
that. Yeah,
notes
just
for
put in there.
everybody. Yeah. That's great. All right. Well, Kier, thank you so much for sharing your information and your thoughts. I'm sure it's going to be great for the listeners. So I really do appreciate your time.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thank you everyone for listening, and please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast so we can reach a bigger audience and help others such as yourself. And don't forget to visit the website, yoursportsresource.com, where you can find articles and tools, as well as more information about how we can work with you, or go view the CULT program on there if you might be interested in that. Finally, remember, what is common sense isn't always common practice. So put what you learn into action. Don't just be good at it. Thanks, everyone.